with a poem by Mary Oliver. Softest of mornings, hello. And what will you do today, I wonder, to my heart? And how much honey can my heart stand, I wonder, before it breaks? This is trivial or nothing, a snail climbing a trellis of leaves and the blue trumpets of its flowers. No doubt clocks are ticking loudly all over the world. I don't hear them. The snail's pale horns as her finger body shuffles forward, leaving behind the silvery path of her slime. Oh, softest of mornings, how shall I break this? How shall I move away from the snail and the flowers? How shall I go on with my introspective and ambitious life? So my name is Jane Dunkel. For about a month ago, I was privileged to travel on a pilgrimage to Iona with 16 other participants from across the United States and Canada. The trip was sponsored by Spiritual Directors International, and no, I am not a spiritual director, but they let me come. And it was led by our former bridge pastor, Simon Ruth DeVoyle, and his close friend, Keegan Refalo, and assisted by Anne Lancaster from SDI. And for those who don't know, Iona is a small island in the Inner Hebrides off the island of Mull, off the western coast of Scotland. It was a center of Irish monasticism for 4 centuries and is today known for its tranquility and natural beauty. And before I start, I do want to dedicate this talk to Kathy Kunin, who we recently lost. As many of you know, Kathy was a deeply contemplative person. And so telling this story that's based on those practices seems appropriate. So Kathy, this is for you. I guess the first slide here. I'm going to talk about this in terms of gifts and challenges. And if I talk too much and you want to just look at photos, just raise your hand and tell me to keep going faster. The first gift was just the gift of challenge, the journey itself. This is kind of a funny photo, but I'll get to it. Before we left, Simon, in his Zoom meetings where he prepared us for it, warned all of us that this isn't an easy place to get to, and that we, that on a pilgrimage, it starts when you leave your home. And so we needed to be able to take deep breaths and just understand that the travel was part of the experience. And I was glad that he said that, because the first thing that happened to me when I got to London Heathrow Airport was that I missed my plane to Glasgow. And all of the connections were very tight on these things, but I had Simon's word, so I just took a deep breath, and it all worked out. I got another plane. I got to Glasgow in time to get the train, the last train at night, to this small town of Oban where we were supposed to stay over, and got into my hotel at about 10 or 11, and that is the photo out my hotel window when I finally got there. I'd been traveling about 48 hours. So the next slide is the view I had the next morning. That is the ferry terminal. And from there, the journey was, you can do the next slide, we met everybody, including Simon and the leaders, and we took a big ferry to the Isle of Mull. So do you have the next photo there? And this is what we saw on the way, just some of what we saw. There's another photo too. That was a lighthouse. There was a castle. I mean, it was gorgeous. We had stunning weather for the entire week, which in March off the coast of Scotland never happens. So we felt very blessed. And in fact, the people on Iona kept saying to us, could you guys just stay? Because we've had 4 months of rain. So next slide, then we pulled into, you get to, and even the next one is good, you get to the Isle of Mull, you get off, you get on a bus that takes you on these very one-lane windy roads, this big huge tour bus, for about an hour to the end of the Isle of Mull. And this is just one of the, this is what it looked like. You pass all these locks and beautiful areas. And then next slide, you get to, this is the ferry to Iona, and that's Iona. It's just a little walk-on ferry. And the reason I have that photo is that it didn't even fit all of us, and so some of us waited and did it. It's a 10-minute ferry. And you can't take cars. The island is about 1 mile wide and 4 miles long, and only the people who live there can have cars. So it's really an amazing place. And now I'm just going to stay on this. So another gift was just the gift of care. It was just the gift of the rhythm of the day. I mean, we were able to stay and not, oh wait, there is one more. This is where a couple more, I guess, one more. This was where we went. Our rooms weren't ready when we got there. This is an ancient nunnery, and we all met there. We had our packed lunches and ate lunch and learned about those things. It was gorgeous, as you can see. And then next slide. Most people stayed in the bishop's house, which is an Episcopal retreat center, but there were 4 of us in an overflow little Catholic house of prayer that was about a half a mile away. And this was the view from my room. This is where I woke up to every morning. I mean, you can start to see what a special place it is. So other gifts were just, again, the rhythm of the day. Meals were prepared for us. I mean, you know, things that we don't normally get in our lives. The food was good, big communal meals. You know, Keegan and Simon's leadership was really a gift. They had things planned for every day. I have the schedule down on the table here. In fact, it was quite ambitious because they're both much younger than most of us who were on there. And we had to actually sort of tell them that after the second or so day, because I think Simon had lived on Iona when he was very young and could do 2 hikes a day and 4 different things. We had to sort of tell him that. And he gave us permission to opt out of things that we couldn't do. And also it was Simon's first long return after many years, and that was a wonderful to witness. I mean, when we were on the island, people would, the first few days, people would stop their cars and jump out and hug him, and he knew everybody, so we were able to go to a farm. He knew the person who owned the farm, and he just knew things that we could do. And Keegan was a very talented person. We had contemplative art projects, and I am not an artist person, but we sewed our own journals, and we did some weaving, which Simon had brought this material from he had been to visit his parents, and his mom was cleaning out her house, and she had sent along a suitcase of all her old sewing things. And so we all used that material, and as we were working on it, Simon would walk around and say, I remember that. That was my grandmother's suit. So anyway, Keegan was wonderful at sort of helping people like me who would go up to him and say, help, it's ruined. And he would say, just give me a minute. All mistakes can be fixed. He was very wise beyond his age. And so the leadership was wonderful. And the fellow pilgrims, being with people, many of them, they were all spiritual directors except me, and many of them were clergy or retired clergy. They were all dedicated to their contemplative practice, and so, you know, it was just a wonderful group. So now we can go on to more slides. The really most important gift was the gift of this sacred place, though. I mean, this is what it looked like everywhere. It was off-season, so the hotels weren't open until the very end. There were very few people on the island, and I took 2 walks by myself, and I just had beaches like this to myself. I mean, you could just walk for miles. Only 170 people live there. It's mostly farms, ancient ruins, and sacred sites. And next slide, I'll just sort of talk about some of these slides. That's, again, a beach. You can keep going, and that's just the wild, beautiful grasses. Next. This is at night, so one of the things I loved about being in the overflow housing was that we would leave the activities at night and walk back a half a mile or a third of a mile to our, at 9 o'clock in the dark to our place. And we had to go through gates because there were sheep grazing outside where we were staying and big signs that said, please shut the gate. And it was just a lovely way to end the day. So next slide. This is just, you can kind of see on the upper left-hand side, that is the village. I mean, it's like about 8 houses. One of them's a hotel and one's a restaurant. And this is where you get off the ferry. There's just boats like that sitting there. It's just a bay. So next slide. This is the front of Bishop's house where we ate and had our retreats, and most of the people stayed. It's a really pretty retreat center. It's Episcopal. Next slide. This is when we went to the farm, and Simon made this boat. His friend had it in his yard. I can't remember quite why, but we just all had to get that picture of Simon with his boat. So that was lovely. Next slide. These are the Celtic crosses that are just everywhere. You pass them every day walking. And next slide. This is looking through the window of the nunnery, at part of the nunnery. I mean, this is the kind of things, one of the speakers that came was a Buddhist, and she lived on the island for 3 months of the year, every year. And she did spiritual practice at the nunnery every morning, walking circles. Next slide. Again, another cross, and just these, all the fences were, stone fences were everywhere, stone buildings. It was gorgeous. Next slide. This is inside the abbey, so there's an old abbey that has been restored, and we were able to worship in it and go to a meeting in it and then tour it one day. This is just, I just took a window. I liked that window. Next. That's from the courtyard, from the cloister, looking at the abbey. Next. And that's just inside one of the halls in the abbey. I just like the architecture. Next. And that's the view from the cemetery next to the abbey, and that's Bishop's house. So those windows you can see are where people stayed, and then we met in the lower part of it. And that is just looking out at the Isle of Mull where we came from. So next, I don't know what the next slide is. Okay, this is St. Oran's Chapel, and I think I'll just tell the story now while you can look at it. So this was, again, one of the gifts of having Simon, was that this is just a little chapel where someone's buried, and there's nothing in it, St. Oran's buried, except they light a candle, and there's a grave. But Simon took us there twice at night, at 9 o'clock at night, and played music by candlelight. And one of my sacred experiences, which it's hard to put into words, is that there were some people from the Iona community who came to join us that night and just stand around. It's not that big. And Simon was playing his version of the Magnificat, if any of you have heard it. It's beautiful. And all of a sudden, these 3 women who had come and had wonderful voices started harmonizing from the side of the thing. And I just, I don't claim to have a lot of these, but I felt like I was being transformed, like I was in this sacred place with this candlelight and this music and these voices coming from I didn't know where. I just felt like I was, so I do think that it is a thin place. I don't think I understood what a thin place was before I went there, but I feel there is a spirit there that really, when you slow down, can enter in. So next slide. Oh, these are the sheep. I mean, this is what cracked me up, is that you'd eat your breakfast, you'd go out in the morning to go to the thing, and there'd be like these sheep looking at you. And they weren't used to people because I think COVID, they hadn't had many visitors, and they would run away. I always wanted to pet them, but they, of course, were not domesticated. But they didn't run away. They just like look at you like, who are you? Why are you here? And I loved them. Next slide. There's another. I just love these guys. They were just everywhere. And then the baby lambs were everywhere. I'll have one of those. But anyway, next slide. This is a beach. This is on the way to St. Columba. So one of the best things we did was hike to St. Columba's Bay, where you get these beautiful Iona stones, which are made of serpentine and quartz, I think, and then they turn into marble, and they're supposed to have healing. And this one I picked up there. This one I did buy, but I have others I picked up there. And yeah, next slide. That's just a lock, a little lake on the way to the St. Columba's Bay. And then next slide. That's when we're almost there. And again, Simon said he'd never been to it on such a calm, non-windy day, sunny, warm day. Next slide. So there it is. I mean, you're just at this. And this is where St. Columba supposedly landed. The legend is that he was exiled from Ireland, and he went in a, a coracle, and it would land, a boat with no oars or sails, and it took him wherever it was supposed to. And he'd stop on an island and get off, and he'd climb to the highest peak, and if he could see Ireland, he'd get back in the boat. And this was the first place where he climbed to a peak and couldn't see Ireland, so he stayed. That's the legend. Next slide. Those are just some of the stones, and we were, you don't gather handfuls, but you are allowed to look for special stones and take them. Next slide. Again, this is St. Columba's Bay. Next slide. Okay, this is my breakfast group, and yeah, they were just amazing. We had a great time with them. The man on the right is a Catholic priest that has worked with students at Washington University in St. Louis for 30 years and had a wicked sense of humor and was really just there on retreat himself. So that was just a gift. Next slide. Daffodils were in bloom, so thanks to Claudia for bringing some. I couldn't find any in the stores. Next slide. Oh, it was lamb season. I mean, everywhere, friends would ask me if I had a good time, and I'm like, I went to this island where it was all baby lambs and sunshine and ancient ruins. Like, yeah, I had a good time. Next slide. This is just another, this is just what you would walk around the island and that's what you'd look at. Next slide. This was a beach that so one of my lessons was to own my own time. So, the schedule was busy and some people, knew early on that they needed to opt out of things and just be on their own and take their time. And I'm sort of more of a schedule person, so it took me a couple days to figure that out. Because 2 of the walks I did by myself were the best times I had, because I ended up places like this. This was one of like many where you're just alone on these beaches. It's so wonderful. Next slide. This is a Highland cow, which I love. They had some of those. I think they're adorable, and they call them Highland coos. And let's see, next. I don't know what's next. Oh, this is just to show you. This is the inside of Bishop's house, and we did wear masks because to be respectful. And this is at night, but you can see that it was a beautiful space, and they had a little thing in the corner where you could always have coffee and tea, and it was the United Kingdom, Scotland, so they brought fresh baked goods every afternoon at tea time. And I mean, it was really, it was like, I was getting ready to leave and saying, what am I going to do? Who's going to bring me my cake every day? So let's see, next slide. What is that? Yeah, and then this is just the bay. We can leave it on this. When we were leaving, the morning we were leaving, I mean, this is just it. So I don't know that I can really do justice to the experience. I mean, we have a WhatsApp of the group that we communicate with each other, and I put in yesterday that I was going to do this talk, and I was worried about it, and one of my friends said, the truth is the sacred aspects of a pilgrimage are those moments that can't be put into words. So I have tried to do that, but my biggest lesson was that the greatest gift I can give myself, I think many of you probably know this more than I, is to slow down and pay attention and notice what's around us and allow the divine to connect to us. I just think we don't do that enough. I mean, there wasn't internet connection on this island, and I was so grateful. So I want to end with a song, and it's called I think it's appropriate for Earth Day. It's called The Lost Words Blessing, and I wanted to tell a background of it. It was written for children, and this is a true story, I think, is in response to the editing of the Oxford Junior Dictionary in recent years to remove words related to nature. Words like acorn, bluebell, ivy, fern, moss, etc., because the editors needed room for other newer words with greater relevance to the modern child, such as attachment, blog, broadband, chat room, database, committee, and voicemail. So anyway, in protest, this song was written in Scottish Gaelic folkloric form by a group of European musicians, and Simon played it for us at our closing ceremony, and it really, I think it's important for Earth Day, and it speaks to many other things besides children for me. So Kathy recommended yesterday that I read this, and then we'll play it. There's a video, but I recommend if you are comfortable to close your eyes and just listen to it, but I want to give you the words first. So the words are, and I think of these, this is to Kathy. Enter the wild with care, my love, and speak the things you see. Let new names take and root and thrive and grow. And even as you travel far from heather, crag, and river, may you, like the little fisher, set the stream alight with glitter. May you enter now as otter without falter into water. Look to the sky with care, my love, and speak the things you see. Let new names take and root and thrive and grow. And even as you journey on past dying stars exploding, like the gilded one in flight, leave your little gifts of light. And in the dead of night, my darling, find the gleaming eye of starling. Like the little aviator, sing your heart to all dark matter. Walk through the world with care, my love, and sing the things you see. Let new names take and root and thrive and grow. And even as you stumble through Mekar sands eroding, let the fern unfurl your grieving. Let the heron still your breathing. Let the selkie swim you deeper, oh my little silver seeker. Even as the hour grows bleaker, be the singer and the speaker. And in city and in forest, let the larks become your chorus. And when every hope is gone, let the raven call you home.